Hello and welcome. As today we're discussing with Eva Hussain, Polaron's director, a little bit about some Polish documents, including marriage certificates. Welcome, Eva.
Thank you, Stephanie. So today we're going to be covering some other vital records, and we're going to be talking about marriage certificates and ID cards. So again, you might think, what a boring topic, but let's see if we can make it a bit more interesting. And I wanted to show you what a typical marriage certificate looks like. What does it contain? Who issues it? And this is in the context of people pursuing their Polish citizenship. It is a requirement under the Polish law to regulate your civil status. In other words, if you're married or if you have ever been married, you need to document that. So often we get people a little bit frustrated with that, but it's become a law a few years ago that you need to have your marriage certificate registered in Poland before you can apply for a passport. Okay. So of course you need your citizenship certificate, your birth certificate registered in Poland, but a marriage certificate for people that have been married or are currently married is also a requirement. And that's regardless of whether you change your name, you're a man or woman or whatever it is, okay? So the process in Poland is called transcription. So essentially what happens is that they take your original marriage certificate and make a version of it in the Polish language. You're seeing that on the screen, and it contains information transcribed from your marriage certificate. And it's stamped and, issued with an official number, etc. This process takes between 4 to 8 weeks in Poland. It's not anything particularly difficult, except for the fact that sometimes in order to be able to create this document, the source document or your marriage certificate doesn't contain all the details. We have states in America like Texas that issues marriage licenses that really don't contain any other information other than brides and grooms details. So we have to supplement it with additional information because the officers at the civil registry office are unable to create something from with no information. They can't kind of go next, registered. This particular certificate is a summary one. It's obviously got bride and groom, their dates of birth, place of birth and parents' names, also witnesses and things like that. If you have been married and divorced, what actually happens in Poland is that we register the marriage certificate, then we proceed to registering your divorce certificate. And if you were divorced before 2009, it requires court representation because the laws have changed. And this is like the most frustrating bit for people because we need to involve your former spouse into it. They have to give us permission, and not everybody's on, if you got divorced, you're probably not on really good terms with your former spouse. No. What we have to do in the case where we don't know where the former spouse is, we need to try and serve the person with the documentation for divorce. They do not need to sign anything if they don't want to, but like ideally we try and get all that paperwork done with the cooperation of the former spouse, if possible, because that just cuts out, time from all the toing and froing. If the divorce, Stephanie, happened before 2009, as I said already, we have a lawyer that will represent you. And that entire process takes up to 12 months because it needs, the matter needs to be heard in the court. And we do need to supply the divorce certificate or the decree. And it needs to have a very important word in it, and that is final. And so sometimes divorce decrees are not in the right format in terms of the content or the wording. So that's a bit of a headache for our lawyer that, because the Polish courts need to be satisfied that there's no further disputes about divorce. Like in a place like in Australia, after 12 months of separation, you can just go and divorce. It's a very painless and simple process. As long as your custody, if you have children, has been dealt with and your property had been dealt with, there's no conversation about who's at fault or whatever. But in Poland, it is. You need to nominate whose fault it was that the divorce happened. It's a very different set of rules about divorce. So the two systems, because they're not equal, between Poland and other countries, they kind of need to be squeeze into what Parliament accepts as as a final divorce. So in any case, if the divorce once again is before 2009, all that happens is that we register your marriage certificate and make notification on your marriage certificate that you are divorced. Before 2009, a big headache and court. So, all right. Now this document, Stephanie, is in, I believe, I can't quite see, it's either Russian or Latin. It is not in Polish, but it's a copy of a book where marriages once upon a time were registered. So across Poland, because it was partitioned and, there were different religious denominations, the documents that we get access to today may be in another language altogether. So it could be Latin, could be Russian, could be German, could be Irish. But we, of course, never get this, the book sits with the Civil Registry Office. So we will get that kind of document as a, as a printout, and they might give us a copy of this also. Okay. So what they do with this document, they also transcribe it onto this form. But we normally request a copy of the actual book, because sometimes on the margins there's further information, or there may be interesting details that they cannot transcribe onto this because there's no room. So we usually would get both in order to use it for your citizenship application. All right, so prior to this red one, marriage certificates in Poland looked like this. And they were sort of beigey, yellowy color. And they stopped being issuing that way. They were replaced by the red certificates. But if you have one like that, it'll say that it's a summary marriage certificate. You can see that it's an official document. And of course, it's accepted in Poland. But if you were to apply for one now, you'd get this one rather than that. Yeah. All right. Now this is an interesting one. This particular document was issued in Germany. So if you know Polish history, you'd know that millions of people ended up as displaced people in Germany after the war. And that is either because they were taken there during the war by the Nazis as slave laborers, or the borders shifted, or they just ended up in Germany. And Germany had a parish, I guess, set up where this at the top here says that it's for Roman Catholic Poles in Germany. In fact, what does that say? I can't quite see. It's something protectorate for Poland in Germany. Yeah. Now, these documents are not accepted as valid by Poland, and I'll tell you why. So these documents were used for people that married in Germany. And in that case, there'd be an equivalent in the Civil Registry Office of the place that the marriage took place in Germany. But they were also used to recreate documentation because if you can imagine, Poles ended up undocumented in Germany often because they were taken off the streets, or they ran, or, this is just after the war. So this process enabled for couples to state that they were married and provide information where they married, what year, who the witnesses were. But these were often created based on verbal statements by people, and they were not always accurate for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes because people didn't know, or other times people didn't want to tell the truth. So today, even though this marriage certificate exists and can be acquired by us, as part of the research, they are not accepted as valid documents that can be used to prove somebody was married. And if you look at legislation in Poland before 1951, for a lot of people, if you're pursuing it under your father's line, it is a requirement for parents to be married. So sometimes this causes quite a big headache for us as well. Yeah. All right. So the last thing I wanted to show everybody is an ID card. So again, we get quite a few questions about that. So in the time that I was born and lived in Poland, this document was compulsory, like you had to have it. And currently, if you reside in Poland, it's still compulsory, but it's a card. It looks like a credit card. I've got one. And this is just a sample one that we got off the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it have? So obviously this says Polish Polish Republic of Poland. I should get it right. And you've got your name, your surname, your given names, parents' names, date of birth, your sex, and then something that's called a PESEL number. And a PESEL number is a unique identifier. It's a bit like social security number, I guess, or tax file number in Australia. And it's made up of your date of birth. So these are the first digits, and then a unique identifier. And then you have issuing authority, president of the city of Warsaw, and a few other information also when it's valid. So this was issued in 2015, valid to 2025. And all of this information is just a replication of the fact that this guy's name's Jan Kowalski, and that's his PESEL number, that's his citizenship. And in Europe, you can use this card to travel on. So you don't need a passport if you're traveling internally between the EU. So it's a document that you have, in Australia, we use a driver's license, or America. In Poland, they have one of those. And this is a biometric passport. We just copied the first page of the same guy, Jan Kowalski, who, and you can see it's bilingual in English, so I don't need to explain too much about this because people can read it. But essentially, it contains biometric features nowadays that include people's fingerprints. And this is why when you apply for a passport, you do need to go to the consulate, because they have a special machine that takes your fingerprints and it's sent real time to Poland through a highly secure system. And the Polish passports themselves are also made in Poland. So the consulate can give you a temporary passport if you have urgent need to travel, but the 10-year passports, as you can see, this one is valid for 10 years, are made in Poland, and they transported to Australia or America by special couriers. So they don't send it by DHL or FedEx. What they do is they have actual couriers, people traveling, bringing this passport. So that's why it can take 3 to 4 months if you live somewhere far. And a lot of people do get very frustrated because, like, in Australia, for example, you have one consulate, and it's a massive continent the size of Europe, but there's no other way. You do need to travel to the consulate. The Polish consulate does do outreach visits like 3 or 4 times a year, but during the pandemic at the moment, you can't. So if you were to apply for a passport, you'd need to, or even have it renewed, you need to travel to the consulate. In America, there are 4 consulates, and they also do a lot of outreach. Same in UK. They've now have outposts where they do, so every couple of months they have a visit for a passport appointment, and people can attend. So there you go. That's my presentation about marriage certificates, ID cards, and biometric passports.
Thank you, Eva. That's a lot of very interesting information. I hope that's helped everyone watching. And just a reminder to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Facebook, because we do upload a lot of interesting information about Polish citizenship. Thank you so much, Eva.
Thank you.